I just bought a PC from a brand so obscure that I'm willing to bet 99% of you have never even heard of it. And as far as I can tell, no YouTuber has ever covered one of these before. I picked it up on eBay for $70. After a long 5-day wait, the package finally arrived. Now I'm genuinely excited and a little worried to open this thing up. What brand is this PC actually from? What kind of hardware is hiding inside? And most importantly, is it as bad as I'm expecting it to be? There's only one way to find out. Let's open it up. From the outside, it looks like a pretty typical SFF Office PC. So if I wanted to drop in a full-size graphics card, yeah, that's gonna be a pain. And you can tell right away this isn't brand new. The front still has a slot for a DVD drive. And, yeah, someone already yanked the hard drive. Love that for me. On the badge it says FPT Leader. Is that actually the brand of the whole system, or just a sticker job? We'll know once we crack it open. Inside, the layout is surprisingly normal. Honestly, it looks like something you'd see from a big OEM. There's a low-profile GPU in here, an Asus GT710, 2GB GDDR5. So the GPU definitely isn't FPT. RAM is 8GB, and then the interesting part, the motherboard and PSU both have FPT branding on them. If you don't know, FPT is a major tech company from Vietnam, so this is likely one of those locally branded OEM builds. The motherboard is basically an Asus Prime H110M2 Micro ATX, full-size board with 4 RAM slots and 2 PCIe 16 length slots. The downside, no M.2 NVMe slot. The upside, it has a ridiculous number of display outputs. 4 ports, all different types. When I looked closer, the board design matches the Asus one almost exactly. It just says FPT instead of Asus. I don't have the real Asus board here to do a side-by-side, but it's really close. This motherboard uses LGA 1151, so it supports 6th and 7th generation Intel CPU. These 2 generations were huge commercial successes, but technically, they're a bit controversial. From 2015 to 2017, Intel basically had no real competition. AMD old FX chips were struggling, so Intel got comfortable. Kaby Lake, 7th generation, was essentially a refined Skylake, 6th generation. Same architecture, just slightly higher clocks. Real-world gains were only about 5 to 10%, nothing groundbreaking. The bigger issue is core count. Across both generations, Intel capped mainstream i7s at 4 cores, 8 threads. That decision aged poorly the moment AMD Ryzen showed up with 6 to 8 cores at similar prices, instantly making these CPUs feel outdated almost overnight. And then there's the 550-watt FPT power supply, which I'm not loving. A 550-watt PSU that only has a 4-pin CPU power connector and 0 PCIe power cables. That tells me one thing. This thing was never meant to run a real GPU, no matter what the sticker says. After taking a closer look, I realized this is actually an SFX power supply, a form factor designed specifically for compact builds, small cases, and mini PC. It's the kind of PSU you'd expect to see in space-constrained systems, where every millimeter matters, not in a full-size tower. Alright, I'm not planning to throw some crazy high-end GPU into this thing anyway, so I'll leave that problem for another day. For now, let's just power it on and see what we're actually working with. First boot attempt. All the fans spin up, which is a good sign, but the screen stays black, no signal. The keyboard doesn't light up either. At this point, it's usually either CPU or RAM. So to be sure, I plug in a speaker, and there it is. 1 long beep, 2 short beeps. Classic RAM error. I tried the usual stuff. Clean the RAM, move it to another slot. Still nothing. Okay, fine. Maybe this stick just isn't happy here. I grab another RAM stick, and boom, we have display. Out of curiosity, I put the original RAM back in. Same problem again. Just to rule things out, I test that RAM stick in another system. And it works perfectly fine. So what's going on? My guess, this OEM motherboard is picky. Like, really picky. It's probably tuned to work best with specific memory modules that shipped with these systems. Basically, not all RAM is welcome here. I swap in a Kingston stick instead. And everything boots normally. So yeah, lesson learned. With OEM boards like this, compatibility matters more than you'd expect. Sometimes the hardware isn't dead, it's just being difficult. Let's check what CPU this thing is running. And alright, that's interesting. Inside, we've got an Intel Core i5-6400, a very safe, very mid CPU from the 6th gen era. 4 cores, 4 threads, with a boost clock topping out at just 3.3 GHz, which is pretty low by today's standards. Modern apps and games really want higher clocks, and this chip definitely feels its age. Right now, it goes for around $20 on eBay, so expectations are managed. Performance-wise, it scores about 1334 in multi-core and 370 in single-core. Nothing impressive, but not completely useless either. That said, I'm genuinely curious how it actually holds up in games. So let's stop looking at numbers and jump straight into the first test, Minecraft. I didn't expect this machine to handle 2K or 4K in the first place. Honestly, even 1080p already felt like a stretch for this setup. And sure enough, at the lowest render distance, FPS hovers around 80, sometimes spiking up to 100 frames per second. Sounds fine on paper, but the catch is obvious. The view distance is tiny. Exploration feels cramped, flying around is awkward, and the world just feels cut off. So I bumped it up to 8 chunks. Surprisingly, performance didn't fall apart. FPS stayed around 60, which is just enough to be playable. But the moment I turned on shaders, the GPU basically tapped out. FPS dropped to single digits, barely hitting 5 FPS. Dropping the resolution to 720p didn't really save it either. FPS still struggled under 10, and even at the absolute lowest settings, I could only squeeze out around 15 to 20 FPS. At that point, I decided my eyes had suffered enough, and it was time to move on to the next game. Fortnite is very CPU heavy, but in this setup, the GPU is the real bottleneck. It's pinned at 100% usage the whole time. With everything set to low, I'm getting around 40 FPS, with small drops during close-range gunfights. It's not ideal, but if you're a casual player and not chasing high refresh rates, this is still playable. Switching over to the classic GTA 5 at HD settings, FPS again sits around 40, and once more the GPU is the limiting factor. The interesting part is consistency. Even while driving at high speed through the city, FPS stays locked around that number. It's not high, but it's stable. No stutters, no freezing, no random dips. So yeah, you're not getting a premium experience here, but for learning the game or just messing around, this machine can absolutely handle it. With CS2, a fast-paced FPS that's pretty demanding on hardware, I tested at HD resolution on the lowest settings. And funny enough, just like the last 2 games, it lands right around 40 FPS. The problem is, for a competitive shooter like this, 60 frames per second really is the bare minimum. Sure, you can move around, aim, shoot, everything technically works, except winning close-range fights. When things get hectic, the lack of frames definitely holds you back. If you're more into visually appealing games, let's jump over to Tomb Raider. This one isn't extremely heavy, so I pushed it to 1080p. In lighter scenes, performance sits at around 40 frames per second, with CPU usage at only about 45%, which actually looks promising. But once the action ramps up, explosions, gunfire, heavy effects, the cracks start to show. FPS drops to around 25, stuttering kicks in, and the experience stops feeling smooth. At that point, it's still playable, but definitely no longer enjoyable. After testing all the games, one thing became pretty clear. Even though this brand might look unfamiliar to a lot of people, the hardware itself is actually made by major manufacturers. So in terms of performance, there's really nothing scary going on here. What's happening is simple. The parts are rebranded for a specific market or use case. The name changes, the stickers change, but the actual components, the PCB, the chips, the overall quality, stay the same. Performance-wise, it behaves exactly like you'd expect from hardware coming out of a big OEM. So if you come across systems like this and the price is right, there's no real reason to avoid them. As long as you know what's inside, they can be a perfectly safe and cost-effective option. Alright, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.